Are you ready? What's my name? What's my name? Say Kareem Ali. Say Kareem Ali. You're listening to
Are you serious?
the Hip Hop Debate Show.
Okay, so hear me out.
The official podcast of Kareem Ali. In about 2 seconds, Kareem Ali will begin to speak.
Well, that's your name.
Yeah. What'd you say?
That's your name. So.
Yeah, it is my name. Kareem Ali TV, the Are You Serious podcast, where we discuss various topics debated through the lens of hip hop culture. And I also have always on the show today Victor Rogers, who's also, for people who are confused, Slangston Hughes, aka the Lyrical Leviathan, poet, MC, activist out of Pittsburgh, PA, hailing from Baltimore City. And we got also the young fella, the MC, the poet, Jay Swan. My guy, how you doing? So today, Kareem Ali wants to talk about, we're going to talk about some hoops right now. And the question was posed to me at some point over the last several years as to who is in terms of the top shooting guards at the position in the NBA, who's the third greatest shooting guard of all time. So Kareem Ali has something to say about this. I'm going to let you guys go, but in about 2 seconds, Kareem Ali will begin to speak. Listen, I think we all know that the top two shooting guards are ironclad. Those spots are cemented. One is Michael Ayer, Jeffrey Jordan, who many believe is the greatest player of all time. So by default, he's the best player to ever play that position. Number 2 slot has to go to the Black Mamba, Kobe Bean Bryant, who in my opinion had the highest skill level of any player I've ever seen, but not quite Mike, but very, very close on both ends of the floor. 5 championships to Jordan 6, inching close to the mic with the 5 titles, and was probably the best player of the 2000s. But in the number 3 slot, and all throughout, I say even through the top 5 slots, it becomes a little more debatable as to what the criteria is for choosing. And you have some really great players who sometimes are left out. There's a question of the logo Jerry West. There's a question of Allen Iverson because of his dominance and his size, pound for pound, one of the most athletic and most skilled players we've seen. Be able to dominate the game at barely 6 feet, 165 pounds. There's also the Flash of Miami, Dwyane Wade, who won. I'll let you go in a second, Josh. Who was able to win 3 championships. It was pretty much unguardable, even by Bryant and many of the people in his prime who also has a Finals MVP to boot. And then you have Tracy Mcgrady, who had a very high skill level, was never able to get out of the first round. There's a guy who I like to talk about, who I'll get into later, who's often overlooked and belittled over the years, which is Clyde Drexler, who's one of the best players to play that position. And I don't think he gets enough credit. And then you have, Reggie Miller and Ray Allen, and in some way you have to put James Harden in there, who's starting to battle his way into the discussion. So I'll go first with Jay Swan. Who's the third greatest shooting guard of all time, Jay?
You already know who it is. Come on, it's Dwyane Wade, man. Like, to me, it's like, like he's my favorite player, by the way. Like, he reminds me of a Allen Iverson, Kobe Bryant, and Michael Jordan in one guy, in my opinion. He won his first championship is like his 3rd year in the league with Shaq. But Shaq wasn't even Shaq no more. He was just, I don't know. He wasn't the Diesel.
I will give you some pushback on that. Shaq was the reason they got to the finals. I mean, they weren't in contention until Shaq was traded there. Let's not. He
may not have been the Diesel, but he was still shocked in his prime.
Yeah, he was still the daddy. He was an MVP caliber player at that point.
He was shocked in his prime.
He was averaging like 13 points in that finals. I was like,
I'll have to look at that. But throughout the playoffs, especially through the conference finals, Shaq was pretty much carrying Miami. For those 2 years, Shaq is the reason they were in the finals. They're not even a contender without O'Neal there. Come on, Jay. Are you serious?
I mean,
D Wade was, he was the closer.
Shaq said himself, like, this is Wade's team. This is Wade's team. But like, you know, everybody needs help. Everybody needs help. And like, you know, he did take him to the playoffs the first year with who wasn't on the team? Brian Grant, Lamar Odom. Who was also on that team? I think Eddie Jones was on the team.
Rafa Alston.
They had a good
Rafa
run.
Alston.
When they get to the second round,
pointers.
they got to the second round.
They got to the second round and lost to the Pacers.
And they went home, yeah. But the next year when Shaq came, what happened? They went to the conference finals.
They went to the conference finals, and they could have won that championship that year. I don't think nobody would have beat them if Shaq and Wade didn't get hurt. Shaq had a bruised thigh, and like I think Wade is hurt his shoulder, I believe, against the Detroit Pistons.
What's your reasoning for saying Dwyane Wade is the greatest shooting guard of all time? And before we go there, we're all clear on who the first two is. There's no argument or discussion there.
Like I'm not gonna. He's my favorite. I wouldn't say he is the greatest. I'll say
the third greatest shooting guard.
Yeah.
After the first two is pretty much indisputable at this point. At this moment in time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like reason he's a 3-time champion. He is one of the main reasons why LeBron James went down to South Beach and gave him some game from how to win a championship. Finals MVP. I think he's been to the All-Star like at least 13 times and
deservedly so.
He's one. And another thing too is like one of the best shot blocking guards in NBA history, and he's 6'4" and he plays like he's 6'8".
Okay.
So like
the Rogers.
There,
what do you say? What do you say about who's your pick for the third greatest shooting guard?
So mine might be a little controversial.
Okay.
It maybe is a little overlooked, slept on individual, bona fide Hall of Famer, and who I actually say is third greatest. And I have 3 reasons why. And some of them, I guess you could say they're not all necessarily by the book, but I always follow in basketball, once again, the closest that Pittsburgh has ever come to having a professional NBA team is the Pittsburgh Pisces. And, the classic movie, The Fish That Saved Pittsburgh, Dr. J was the star player. My basketball coach got a rebound in the last scene, and my dad was in the stands when they were filming. So that was our closest to having an NBA franchise, the Pittsburgh Pisces. Well, I believe in the movie, technically, it was like an ABA team. But, so I always followed the team that my favorite players were on. My favorite player, my earliest memories was Scottie Pippen. Wasn't Jordan, because everybody's favorite player was Jordan. I want to be different. I was Pippen. I worked in 33 middle school. And so then Pippen went to the Blazers, the Rockets, and then the Blazers. I followed him there. But then as Pippen was, starting to wind down, it was Rasheed Wallace, and it was Ray Allen. Ray Allen, I say, is the third.
Wow.
Of all time.
Are you serious?
I'm gonna tell you why.
I'm serious. That's a shocker right there, man.
I told you it's a little controversial.
Jesus Shuttlesworth?
Jesus Shuttlesworth.
Oh, come on.
Named after Black Jesus of the court himself, Earl of Pearl, in the movie. But this is why. At the time he retired, arguably the best 3-point shooter of all time. Statistically, definitely the best 3-point shooter of all time. Clutch. The most clutch. LeBron would have one less ring if not for Ray Allen. His from Milwaukee to Seattle, to Boston with the Celtics, to Miami, always consistent. And he was one of the first players of that position who wasn't just a one note, where it was either he was a shooter / scorer or he was a slasher highlight type of offensive weapon. He could do both. He was as effective spotting up as he was being able to come off the dribble, being able to drive, being able to set up other players to have open shots because you had to account for him at all times. One of the most consistent shooters. And, superior athletic skills too. Size, 6'5", playing the 2. Like, to me, Ray Allen should be in the discussion.
Better than
I think it's a wide open discussion.
Better than Flash.
I think it's a very wide open discussion.
So it's not.
significant number 3.
There's two different arguments going on here, though.
As a shooter and as a scorer, one of the best of them.
One is there's the greatest, and greatness is a measure of accomplishments, and then there's the best, and best is a measure of the eyeball test of your skill set, your versatility, and what you are able to do. And even with that, I thought Ray Allen was better than Reggie Miller. Reggie Miller is more legendary in terms of some of the moments he's had. But I think player for player, as far as skills, Ray Allen, because people forget that Ray Allen, he could handle the ball, he could slash. He also was a pretty great defender in his time, or even all the way up through what I thought was the greatest defensive team I've ever seen in the Boston Celtics of the late 2000s. And Ray Allen was one of the catalysts for that, defending most of the 2 guards in that generation. So I give him credit, but I'm sorry. I just there's the logo, Jerry West, 9 NBA Finals appearances, won one, and also won a Finals MVP in a losing effort. 44 points in an overtime game in the finals. Jerry West averaged about 27 a game in his career, and also a great defender. But people don't look back to that era. But Jerry West has every right to be considered in that discussion in the top 3. I think that Allen Iverson wasn't able to win, but I just have to respect him for his dominance at that.
But the question is, was AI technically a point guard?
AI is a shooting guard.
He's a shooting guard.
He's a 2 guard.
He handled the ball almost all the time.
Yeah, but so did some of the other shooter guards who were just ball dominant.
Right.
Michael Jordan had the ball all the time. Kobe did playmaking things, but he also, a lot of times, they would break the triangle and go into one-on-one tirades. And so they made a lot of decisions. Allen Iverson came in, played listed at point guard, but when Larry Brown came, they found it best to move him to the shooting guard position and build a defensive minded team around him so that he was a volume scorer, but Allen Iverson was dominant. I don't put him as high because I just feel like Dwyane Wade at this point, he won 3 championships. But look, I have to push back with Clyde Drexler. People act like Clyde Drexler wasn't even given Jordan work in the 80s and the early 90s. He was considered Jordan West. He didn't have the same type of green light. He wasn't going to shoot 24 or 25 times a game. But Drexler would average 25 or 26 points a game, 4 or 5 assists, 5 or 6 rebounds. Drexler was like a small forward playing shooting guard with long arms, big hands, and people always denigrate him for the game in the NBA Finals in '92 in Game 1 where Jordan hit 6 threes in the first half, and people make it seem like that was the dominance with the shrug game. That almost belittled Clyde Drexler and make it say that was the crux of his career, and that Jordan was here and Drexler was here. It was actually a little bit closer in that time period. Drexler was an MVP caliber player, mostly an MVP candidate, never was able to win one. I have my knocks on Clyde Drexler, but on both ends of the floor, Clyde Drexler was dominant in that time period. So the fact that he never gets mentioned at 6'7", it's just preposterous to me. I don't know that if Ray Allen was dealing with Clyde Drexler, who will come out on top if they would face each other in a 7-game series. You got to give Clyde some props. And the rest of that 92 series, it's not like Drexler just went away after Game 1. I mean, he put up numbers. And I didn't like how in the Jordan documentary they didn't include that. Like, they was overshadowing, Clyde Drexler for real. They were. So, Jordan was better. Jordan had more facets to his game. He was more developed. His skill level was higher. His fundamentals were more polished than Drexler was. My knocks on Drexler was the fact that in 1990, they made it to the NBA Finals. They lost to Isaiah Thomas and the Detroit Pistons in 5 games. Isaiah was more neurotic about winning. In 91, they were 63-19. They beat the Lakers 5 times in the regular season, but in the Western Conference Finals, Clyde Drexler was outsmarted by older Magic Johnson, less athletic. Drexler was guarding him most of the series, and the Lakers won in 6 games, where Portland probably should have been in the finals a year earlier. Then 92, we know what happened, but they were very closely. That those teams, it was an even match to the Chicago Bulls. Buck Williams, Jerome Kersey, Duckworth, Terry Porter seemed to take every big shot down the stretch when games was on the line. Drexler didn't always come through, so I have my knocks on him. But at the same time, Clyde Drexler should be in the conversation for at least a top 5 greatest shooting guard of all time, if not number 3. Because I don't know if those players are better.
I'll put him top 5.
Okay.
I'll put him top 5.
Yeah, I think Clyde is a very fair choice.
Are those
Like I
guys
said,
better than Clyde? I mean, if you got more championships, I get it, Wade, but
Yeah.
if they had to match up against each other, are you dealing with Clyde?
No, man. I think Clyde is a great choice. 2, I think that number 3 really is a pretty wide open conversation. But 3, I think I've always heard people give Clyde his due, though. Like, people have always talked about how great Clyde was, even from like his college career, and then how that transitions into the NBA.
Jammer.
Yeah, like Clyde Drexler. Like, I mean, at the time when he was playing, Clyde was. What I remember most about Clyde Drexler is how much he was talked about, and during the time that Jordan was out of basketball. Those Rockets teams that won.
He won a championship with Hakeem Olajuwon.
Because those were the years where Clyde was really dominant in terms of like one of the main scorers other than Olajuwon, and in the way that him and Sam Cassell kind of played together was really, really impressive. Like, that was a really strong backcourt. Like, Clyde has always gotten his respect in terms of people out here talk about that era. It's just that the more known narrative has to do with that game against the Blazers and the Bulls. But I mean, you could easily say Clyde Drexler is right there. Like, he's absolutely top 5. I think you can make a very strong case for 3. I think that any of those 3 have a very strong case. I think popular opinion, and short memory is people are going to say Dwyane Wade probably. I think that if you look at overall skills and accomplishments, that might be Ray Allen. But if you look at like most consistent career over a longest span, that's probably Clyde Drexler.
The Ray Allen thing just troubles me.
It does. It troubles me too, man.
I think y'all are forgetting how prominent Ray Allen really was and what he did best.
I'm an NBA historian. I know Ray Allen.
Like those years in Milwaukee when he really had
with Sam Cassell.
With Sam Cassell, like those were some really good teams, and he was the catalyst. That year with the Celtics, when it was like, okay, Paul Pierce might be getting doubled, KG is, getting some foul trouble. Ray Allen was the guy who always stepped up and made sure the big games were like they didn't fall in games.
Championships.
Defensively, a lot of people hate Ray Allen, especially if you were a Celtics fan and then saw how he jumped ship to the Heat. But then again, he was an extreme catalyst on those Heat years.
Okay, at that peak, I'm gonna ask you this: are you taking Dwyane Wade at his peak? Oh no, scratch that. Are you taking Ray Allen at his peak over Dwyane Wade at his peak? I want to hear this.
I am, because if he has a wide open shot, he's gonna make a higher percentage of them than Dwyane Wade. He's just as good as a defender.
I disagree with that.
D Wade's jumper was always spotty. Ray Allen not only was great from beyond the arc, but his short range game was really strong.
I'll give you that. Ray Allen is a good shooter. He was a great 3-point shooter, but as far as like an all around game, a guy that's gonna give me blocks, rebounds, a playmaker who is gonna play defense, that's gonna score a good 30 every night.
Ray Allen's gonna score a good 30 every night. You can put Ray Allen on your best offensive backcourt player against anybody.
You make a compelling argument, Victor.
He's great off the dribble.
Dwyane Wade is a better.
People forget how good he was at finishing at the rim as well.
Dwyane Wade is a better athlete. Dwyane Wade is a better athlete, but Dwyane Wade might be like 6'3.5", which makes his athleticism really superb. He was lightning quick. Yeah. Defensively, he was solid after the 2008 Olympics when Braun and Wade played with Kobe. They came back different. They came back better defenders, focusing on that side of the floor. I would say that Dwyane Wade is a better off-the-ball defender, off the weak side for blocks and steals, catching you off the weak side. Ray Allen is probably a better on-the-ball defender. When you're faced with someone and you have to stop them and lock them down, I would give Ray Allen that. Mm-hmm. When it comes down to a checklist of skills, you make a compelling argument for Ray Allen. He does have 2 championships, but towards the end, he wasn't necessarily the driving force. Dwyane Wade was close to at least being the driving force for at least one of those titles, and he was the second best player on 2 of them. As far as Ray Allen, when he won his championships, I feel like he was the 3rd best player on the Celtics, maybe the 4th because Rondo was there and coming along. And then on the Heat, he was probably the 4th or 5th best player. I have to really sit and think about it. But you make a compelling argument as far as skills. But as far as number 3, I have to I lean towards Wade because of the title count and his and what he had to do with them winning those titles. But Clyde Drexler's got a championship too, and I don't know if either of these guys was faced against Clyde. Even Kobe said that he was one of the toughest players that he had to face, and that was like early career. Clyde Drexler, towards the end of Clyde's career, facing a young Kobe, he had problems with Clyde because of his size, his length, his physical strength, and the physicality of the NBA back then. It's just kind of hard to say. But another player that I want to get to that we haven't mentioned, where does James Harden fit in all this? With his offensive tirades in the last few years and what he's been able to do, it's only three other players that have more 60-point games than James Harden. Wilt Chamberlain has like 28 or 30 or something crazy like that. Kobe Bryant has 6. Michael Jordan has 5. James Harden has 4. That's unusual.
I give James Harden the top 10.
Okay. Where in the top 10? Where is he in the top 10 for you, Vic? Is he top 5? I'm not saying he's number 3. I'm not big on James Harden. I think he's overrated.
One, it's a wait and see thing still because his story's still been written. 2, so much of those statistics are fool's gold in that Mike D'Antoni system.
Yes.
Because you see how his numbers are not the same with the Nets. His volume of shooting is not the same.
He's 3, the best player in the NBA, Vic. and
he doesn't have any rings. And
nothing.
And he's a choke.
He may not get any.
Yeah, and then you look at the postseason. He's like the A-Rod of basketball right now. Like when it comes to the playoffs. So, but the thing is that there are too many other names that you can still put in the conversation either with or before James Harden. Like we haven't even said anything about Klay Thompson.
I don't think Klay Thompson's a top 10 shooting guard of all time. Not yet.
Nah, I don't think so.
Neither is Harden.
I think he may.
But if you're going to bring Harden into discussion, you can't ignore Klay Thompson.
Do you think that James Harden is better all around than Reggie Miller was? From a numbers standpoint, he's one of the greatest offensive weapons.
Reggie Miller would give you more quality points. More quality points against better opponents.
He's a better playmaker than Reggie Miller was, but
playmaker, yes.
Honestly.
James Harden has played point guard for like the last 3 seasons when he's
right.
And Mike D'Antoni's system, which definitely elevates your offensive output if you're anywhere near your prime. It got Steve Nash a couple MVPs. I don't believe he deserved.
Yeah, and especially if you're a dribbler like him and Nash both. They're great dribblers. They're gonna.
I don't think James Harden could do what he's doing now in the previous generation, or any. I just don't think in a half court setting because he doesn't have a post game. He does get to the basket, but there's nothing waiting for you at the rim in this era. There's no interior defense in the same way. And from a perimeter standpoint, it's like so much more spacing on the floor that they can't really shrink the court against him. But when you do that, he's limited to just 1 or 2 offensive options because analytics makes people into robots sometimes, some of these players. So I do think James Harden is a little overrated, a little overblown, but I feel like with the numbers he's put up, I would be remiss. It would be unfair not to say that he is somewhere battled himself into the top 10, but he's got to win.
Yeah, and like he had so many chances to, win the championship. He had at least 3 Hall of Famers. Like he had Russell Westbrook, he had Chris Paul and Dwight Howard. He had so many chances to win, but he blew it. Really. So
I mean, a lot of times it's easy to be like, well, they blew those chances, but they were going against a juggernaut of a super.
They had him beat.
They had him beat. They had him beat 7 games.
until Chris Paul got injured.
Yeah.
They win that game if Chris Paul's at 100%.
Chris Paul is an absolute dog. Okay, so another player that I'm surprised that I wasn't necessarily super big on, but that neither one of you guys mentioned was Tracy McGrady from a skill standpoint and what he could do defensively, but rarely did. But what he was able to do on the offensive end, he could do almost everything that Kobe could do, but he was 6'10".
Well, so there's 2 things though. With Tracy McGrady, he's 6'8". One though with McGrady is that if he had not gotten hurt with the Rockets when he did,
right,
that's a much different conversation. And I also think McGrady is top 10 all time. But the real question is, a lot of times he was kind of looked at as being a 3.
Yeah, I was about to say that. He was looked at as like a small forward.
He's more of a small forward.
I feel like he's a tweener. I look at him more like a shooting guard, especially going later in his career. Early on, I feel like they put him at the 3 a lot. But I feel like when he played with Vince Carter was the 3, right? Was Vince Carter a 2?
Carter would usually kind of be the 2 more so when they were in Toronto.
It got to be interchangeable in a way because you're just 2 wing players. So it's hard to say. So Tracy Mcgrady, I think he ranks higher as a shooting guard than he probably would as a small forward because there are a lot of small forwards.
Look who you're going up against.
Yeah, he had too many small forwards.
That's the reason, segue. That's the reason they try to list Tim Duncan as a power forward. I feel like Tim Duncan was really a center, but if you list Tim Duncan as a center, he would not really rank amongst all the greatest centers of all time. But as a power forward, you can rank him at the top.
Because he was playing the 5 that first year when Robinson was able to go for the 4.
Even when he was a 4, he was really a 5. It was just interchangeable in the Spurs offense. They just said he was the 4, in my opinion. But I mean,
you can say the same about Jerry West. He also played point guard.
He did, but Jerry West is pretty much known to be a shooter. Gail Goodrich back then on that team was the point guard for the Lakers in the championship.
Somebody
he led the league in assists. Jerry West.
So did Wilt Chamberlain one year.
I mean, somebody I think that we're kind of unfairly leaving out. I'll bring in 2 of them actually. 2 New York Knicks. One is a much more prominent, probably top 10. The other is a little more of a wild card. But what do we have to say about Walt Clyde Frazier? And what do we have to say about Allen Houston?
Walt Clyde Frazier is a point guard. So the guy you want is Earl the Pearl Monroe, who was a shooting guard. Frazier was the point guard for sure.
Frazier never played the 2.
He never played the 2.
He took a whole high volume of shots. So.
He did, but he was a point guard. He was a great defender. He probably is a top 10 or 12 point guard of all time. As time goes on,
it's weird. I don't think of him in my head as a point guard.
Yeah, he's a point guard. So Earl Monroe was the 2. When they traded Earl Monroe for the Baltimore Bullets to the Knicks, he was the shooting guard. So they were one of the best backcourts we've ever seen.
Jesus Shuttlesworth was technically named for.
The guy
nobody mentioned Iceman.
But Gordon was a small forward,
I thought he was a shooting guard.
At some point in his career, he was. But I'm trying to think, in his prime, I want to say he was more of a small forward. But we could be wrong, though. I got to look at Gervin. Gervin might be a shooting guard. But I think the game has evolved so much that it's kind of, as years go on, more players get added and sometimes people get bumped out. And so, people have a higher skill level now than they ever did. I don't necessarily think that means that the players today are just flat out better than the players before. But some of the versatility of the skills that they have,
different level of development.
It's a level of development. It's more as basketball has just evolved. But if you were to face them against each other, it's really hard to say because back then it was so much more physical with so many more things you could do from a defensive standpoint. And the way the game is called causes you to develop certain skills that you may not have needed. There was a time where when the 3-point line first came in, they didn't really shoot them. The game was played 18 feet in. They shot mid-range games. It was much more predicated.
And coaches wouldn't let you jack up that.
They wouldn't let you jack them up. But now because of the spacing, it's like,
some of those old guys who watch basketball now, they're appalled.
What you have to say, Swan?
Yeah, I was about to say, it's like I think personally, I think Anthony Davis is more of a talent and skill level than Tim Duncan, but I don't think he's greater than Tim Duncan.
Yes. It's just the way your game develops. Tim Duncan was more of a traditional big man, and he developed big man skills, whereas Davis came up in a time period where big men were developing perimeter skills. And so he does have more to choose from. But I think if they were faced with each other, I got Timmy all day giving him work.
I mean, Duncan was, coming up in the Virgin Islands, he just practicing his Kevin McHale's and what have you.
Right. So
3-pointers and dribbling.
They got a McHale drill, McHale or Micah drill or whatever. The McHale, McHale's one of the greatest post players of all time. Yeah, so I think we pretty much covered it.
So no love for Allen Houston.
Come on, man. They still paying him that absurd contract they gave him.
Right.
He retired on that $168 million, whatever he was getting.
To quote the one and only Carl Mega, smoothness like Allen Houston when he shoots.
You must have been. There's no way that Allen Houston belongs anywhere near this conversation.
No.
Might as well put Patrols. Yeah.
I'm going to say Spreewell. Yeah.
I preferred Spreewell a little bit, but there's no way that Allen Houston is. Allen Houston is a top 50 shooting guard.
Now, wait a minute, though. Hardaway played the 2.
Penny?
We didn't even talk about Hardaway.
Penny's the point guard. Penny was a point guard.
He's a point guard.
Penny played point guard.
He's a point guard. Nick Anderson was the 2.
Anderson was the 2, right?
Come on,
again, just like Wall-Claw Frazier.
shit together, Vic.
Hardaway was scoring so much. You know, he's such a high volume scorer.
He wasn't even scoring a lot. He was scoring like 23 a game, 22.
He was so high profile. He wasn't even scoring them.
Stackhouse.
Who was Stackhouse? Stackhouse was playing.
Stackhouse was a 2. In fact, Penny, they used to compare him to Magic, but he only averaged about 16, 6 assists.
But what was Penny was like a good 6'8", right?
He was 6'7", 6'8", but he was only averaging about 6 assists, 5 or 6 assists a game. It was like 5.4.
It was a time when he was so
12. I mean,
he was so high profile. Like his shoes were so damn expensive. He had the commercials, the dummy. Like
Penny was the guy.
Penny was definitely the guy.
I love Anthony Hardaway, but I mean, when your game is predicated on athleticism, and when you start to lose that athleticism, if you didn't build up, submit any of your other skills from a fundamental standpoint, it really takes away from what you could do. So once he hurt his knee, he just wasn't really the same. And Allen Iverson put him out of the playoffs in 97. 97, Allen Iverson put him out of the playoffs, and I was disturbed. I was like, how are you going to let this midget it didn't make any sense to me because I wasn't high on Iverson at first. I actually thought that Stephon Marbury was going to be better because he looked stronger. I thought he was a stronger point guard. I had no idea what was coming. I really thought that Allen Iverson wasn't going to be that good in the NBA. I didn't think he had an NBA style game. It was very street, polished.
You know who beat him in the Final Four? Ray Allen.
Iverson just didn't have help. That's all. If Iverson... He just didn't have
he wouldn't
help.
have used his help. But wait a minute, hold on, Vic. I gotta say something. You know who beat in the playoffs when they counted? Who beat Ray Allen in those Milwaukee teams? Allen Iverson.
He did. He did.
He got his payback in the pros.
He beat Vince Carter and Ray Allen that year.
Like if Iverson did have help, he wouldn't have used it because he would have took all the shots. He once had Stackhouse. He had Chris Webber. They tried to give him players.
Chris Webber was old.
I think if he had a more decent post presence at that time, that would have helped him out in a way that he could have benefited.
They had a great defensive team. But he went and got Carmelo Anthony, and they both were averaging 25 points a game, and Kobe was destroying them. Like
when he went over to the Nuggets?
He went over to the Nuggets. He was still at the top of his game, averaging 25 with Melo, another one of the best scorers in the NBA at that time. So he got his help.
Defensively, they stink. They stuck.
But they didn't stink the next year when Chauncey Billups came and forced them to play defense and took them to the conference finals further than they had ever been.
But you got to think about it. Chauncey Billups is like a floor general more than a guy.
Yeah.
Right.
He's a floor general.
That's my biggest degradation, my biggest knock against AI. You have a straight up trade for one player for another, and Billups makes the team better than Allen Iverson could. Allen Iverson, I think they lost in the first round to the Lakers. Kobe had 49 in game 2 or something like that. It was absurd. And then the next year, Billups comes and they go to the conference finals. They still lose to the Lakers in 6 games, but it was a toughly contested series. And they were a much better defensive team.
Chauncey Billups is nobody's consolation prize. Talking about one of the most superb big point guards who ever played. Power dribble your ass to death.
Yeah, Chauncey Billups. That Detroit Pistons team, man, back in 2004 when they beat the Lakers, that was mean. That's a mean. That was. I was
so upset that they didn't get back to back, all because somebody left Robert Horry.
I mean, how do you do that? We're talking about Sheed, right? I can't fathom, like, why would you do? Do you watch?
Listen, there are 2 games.
Stuff like, what are you doing?
There are 2 NBA games that still haunt me to this day. That one, and then that game, the Lakers and the Blazers, when the Blazers had the Lakers beat, and then the Lakers came storming back, and the Blazers went cold for like.
I remember 2 years. That game. I couldn't even believe it. I couldn't even believe the Blazers.
I lost $50 on that game.
That was the game that started it all, right there. The
lob, like that was supposed to be Pippen's last championship run, right there. And after the game, Pippen went and knocked all of the little mats.
If Pippen even gets to the finals without Jordan, it will force history to view Scottie Pippen differently. He missed his chance, even if he didn't win it. If he just got to the finals without Jordan,
had that series. They had that
it would have elevated Pippen's status in the minds of everyone. He wasn't able.
Wow.
Yeah, that was the beginning of that Lakers run.
What were you like? 12 years old, Small. You 12 in 2000. How old were you?
I was
a little fella.
Grade.
I was a day. 2000, I was 10.
See?
I was in 10th
10,
grade.
I was
Good
10.
grief. Good
Hey.
grief. I think I was just getting out of high school or something like that. But all right. I mean, okay. I think that's pretty much it. So no one wants to. So you're going Ray Allen 3, and you're going Dwyane Wade 3.
Yeah.
And I'm
Dwyane Wade 3.
I'm actually not really sure. I mean, I have I kind of have to lean towards Wade because of the ring count. But then there's Jerry West, who should get respect, and I still have to give respect to Clyde Drexler. Well, I'll probably put it 5 because he didn't win as much. He didn't come through when it counted. So,
I mean, Wade and Kobe had, like, in my opinion, him and Kobe and Wade, it like falls like shooting guards had like the best battles, like going back and forth.
Well, Wade was almost unguardable. I mean, Wade couldn't guard Kobe. He could take him into the post, but Kobe couldn't really stay with Wade on the high screen and roll either. Whenever you get up there, I would lose my mind. I'd be like, oh, shit. He's got to be giving this high screen and roll. Like, help Artest, where you at? Odom, flank over because Wade was about to go all the way to the rim.
I mean, at that point in the NBA, if you were he had like that good in between size, where it's like you couldn't just put somebody big on him because he's gonna go past him, and you couldn't put somebody small on him because he's gonna muscle him. So it
was great seeing them in the Olympics together, Wade and Kobe.
And we didn't even mention how great of a shot blocker he was.
You did. Like, you mentioned it like 5 times. That was your favorite player. I got tired of you mentioning it, actually.
Yeah, man, I don't remember all these Dwyane Wade.
He had like over 100 blocks.
He was a great shot blocker.
It was like, man, I guess he was small man's Elijah one.
The best I've seen of that, it's probably Michael Jordan, because Michael Jordan used to block centers. He would wait. He would gamble too much on defense sometimes, Mike would, but he was a terror. If you turn your back, Patrick Ewing turned his back for a turnaround, Mike was coming behind him for a shot block that he didn't see coming. So, and Dwyane Wade was doing things of that nature. So he was definitely a great player. I could settle with Wade at number 3. You make a compelling argument for Ray Allen. So Ray Allen was really like 7 or 8 on my list. But because of what you said, I might have to move him higher, but I really need to think about it. Because there's not too many people better than Ray Allen, really. It's not.
I mean, I think it's fair to say that these 3 could round out the top 5, with Jerry West being part of that discussion, too.
Okay. I think it's fair to say. I mean, better than Ray Allen, it's hard to say. I mean, only Michael and Kobe really are really better. Other than that, it's really hard to say. I kind of agree with you. But I'm going to go Wade. I'm going to agree with Swan on him. I'm going to say Wade is top 3 because of the titles. You're saying Ray Allen is better than Allen Iverson, too? You're going to reference the feathers.
Allen Iverson, to me, is such an anomaly, though. Yeah. Because it's like he's a 1 who played 2.
He couldn't really defend anybody because of his size.
Right, but he really is the most unstoppable out of anybody in this discussion.
He did win MVP.
Like he won MVP at 6 foot.
Time is up, guys. Do y'all want to do another one? I don't have any more that I can think about, but this one's over.
So I have to stand here today as what I was when I was born, a black man.
Your racism bounces off me, I'm bulletproof. Your prejudice gets deflected, I'm bulletproof. Your hatred can't penetrate me, I'm bulletproof. Our minds can't be shackled no more, nah, we know the truth. Yeah, from the spot that Malcolm stood, looking out through the window, I'm looking out over my...